If you're joining us this week for the first time, use the chat box to share your name, your district, your position, and your goal for participating in the book study. And as you're doing that, as we discussed in our last session, each time we meet, we will begin with an SEL check-in, so that way we can get to know one another, identify with our emotions, and increase our engagement. So take a moment to reflect on how you're feeling in this moment. Use the chat box to hashtag your feelings. So some examples might be hashtag joyful, hashtag focused. So go ahead and head over to that chat box and tell us how you're feeling. Good. Productive, hopeful, thankful, tired, and joyful. Yeah, I've had a pretty productive day today too. Grateful. Oh, we got some tired. All right, well, thank you so much, and keep them coming in the chat if you haven't had a chance to hashtag your feelings. So this activity aligns to the CASEL competency of self-awareness. The core competency of self-awareness is the ability to understand one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior across context. So just as a reminder, the South Carolina Department of Education has embraced the CASEL model for the integration of SEL in South Carolina schools. The CASEL website, which is casel.org, we have it on this slide, is filled with research, guidance, tools for educators and school communities. It's really a wonderful resource when thinking about social emotional needs of both students and staff during another unique school year. So also the South Carolina Department of Ed has a SEL website. We have that link on this slide too. And again, it has additional resources for parents, students, teachers, other support professionals. And it even has some lessons in there that can be utilized from 4K all the way through 12th grade. So again, check those resources out when you have time. So as a reminder, we are your facilitators for this book study. Please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions regarding the implementation of MTSS in your district. So in preparation for our discussion today, please have available your MTSS book, a writing utensil, a notebook or paper, and Post-it notes if you have them available. You should have read chapter 2. You should have read chapter 2 prior to this session and use the CASH protocol to reflect on your reading. You will also want to have your digital agenda open so that you can access all the needed links and resources for today's book study session. As a reminder, first, please mute your microphone. If everyone could go over and check. Everyone could go over and check to make sure that they have their microphone muted. Add questions to or comments to the chat feature anytime throughout the discussion. And if comfortable, we ask that you turn on your camera so that way we can engage in open dialogue with one another.
Okay, so to create the most ideal conditions for our book talk discussions, we shared these simple virtual meeting norms for last week, but we wanted to review them this week. And as a reminder, that we ask that you, all participants, excuse me, adhere to these meeting norms. Be present, but again, by having your cameras on if possible, and eliminating any distractions that might take you away from your ability to get the most out of this time together. We asked you to be prepared, having read everything, and using the protocols. We ask that you share airtime when speaking to allow other voices to be heard in the conversation, but also to be sure to share your thinking. We had a great discussion last time, so we want to keep that up during this session. And then finally, actively listen, respect each other's ideas, and be sure to support your ideas by referring back to the text or drawing connections to the text. I'm gonna let a few people into our session, and then we can keep going. So to kick off our whole group discussion, I'd like us to reflect on this question. Why is an integrated approach to supporting students essential for enhancing student achievement? You're going to use the Padlet link in your digital agenda. You can get there by going to the bit.ly address listed on the screen, scan the QR code, or again through the link in the agenda. And this Padlet is set up so that participants can connect ideas with arrows in order to create a mind map. So you'll record your ideas, and then you can move your entry around and add connections to others' ideas by clicking on the 3 dots and then selecting to connect to a post. This is a fairly new feature in Padlet, so we'll just see how it goes. And you'll have about 4 minutes to work independently before we'll come back and really open up for a whole group discussion. So again, why is an integrated approach to supporting students essential for enhancing student achievement? All right, you'll have 4 minutes to respond in the Padlet. For those of you who are just joining us, I apologize if you were sitting in the waiting room. I was just sharing with the rest of the group that we are in our whole discussion portion of our time together. So if you're in your digital agenda, you can click on the link to the Padlet that links to our whole group discussion where we're entering our ideas on why an integrated approach is essential for enhancing student achievement. Oh, I am just seeing the notes around the bit.ly address. So I am going to get the link real quick. And put it in our chat. And I see we have about 35 participants in our meeting. So let's get a few more ideas up on our Padlet before we move to our discussion of these ideas. While you're waiting though, be sure that you're reviewing everyone else's thinking, making those connections between ideas. Yes. Oh, I see Dawn is very efficient with Padlet. She's even got a picture in there. All right, well, let's come back together and let's just think, what are some big ideas you're taking away into this initial dive into why an integrated approach to supporting students is essential? You can go ahead and unmute yourself and then share your ideas.
I really
Okay,
love
well,
this.
I'll start. I'm Deborah McKnight. I think that it should be integrated because as I'm noticing, as everyone is putting their tying in behavior with academic support, and as a former teacher, I know how it is when you're trying to instruct the students and you have behavior issues in your classroom. So you have to address those behavior issues in order for you to be able to give the students the intensive, targeted, effective instruction that they need. And you can't do that academically if you're having problems with behavior in your classroom.
Yes. Sometimes it's important to think, is this, is the lack of progress from our students due to just an inability to teach because of the behavior? What other ideas?
So this is Lisa Spears, and I come at this from a clinical perspective and with experience in an elementary school. And as I shared with a group of teachers just this week, the academics can be the trigger for the behavior. And so teachers have the unfortunate task of presenting students with the stimulus for triggering a lot of behavior reactions. And so if a student is low, obviously they don't want the whole classroom to know. And so they get removed, they miss instruction, they get further behind. And from reading the book, they never really even catch up. And so it's difficult because teachers need to teach. So it's a vicious cycle.
Right.
Y'all, this chapter was so beneficial to me, the research behind it. And I was talking to our SPED director, and she explained, the belief in SPED with clinical psychologists has always been an integrated approach. And she explained to me that they're comorbid. They occur together a lot of times, behavior issues and academic issues. So it would make sense then that we would have an integrated approach to treating them. Really loved being able to piece through how, like you said, Lisa, the different antecedents to the behavior is really crucial with an FBA at determining, is it the root of it academic and the behaviors are stemming from that, or is the root of behavior and it just impacts the academics? And so I don't know about you guys, but at the district level, trying to incorporate MTSS, we want it to be a whole child integrated approach, but sometimes at data team meetings, we're looking at one time, we call it our win block, at the time that all principals built that into their schedule of how do we serve kids. So sometimes it can be silos, like, well, we got reading intervention RTI over here, we got ESOL over here, we got behavior with psych or guidance over here. And chapter 2 really helped as much as possible think about how we can provide teachers with behavioral supports and strategies so that they can co-treat because they're interconnected, they're intertwined. So we've been having some think tank discussions about how best to do that. And I would love to find out from you guys, how you're doing that so that it is holistic in nature.
I'm just so excited because it's wonderful to hear that the book study isn't stopping at you. You're reaching out and pulling others and their ideas in. So it is truly a collaboration, and it's going to have a bigger impact when you're making all those connections. So thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, on page 30, we see one study of the importance of an integrated approach. It says that Cook and colleagues looked at the effects of reading only interventions and behavior only interventions, and then both types of interventions. And it said, although each intervention was somewhat effective overall, and the combined intervention was most effective, the reading only intervention was ineffective for students with attention maintained problem behavior. And the behavior only intervention was ineffective for students with escaped maintained problem behavior. And these results provide further evidence that the function of the problem behavior is a critical variable to use when designing effective academic and behavioral support plans, as well as a strong explanation for why academic interventions are only sometimes effective in reducing problem behavior. And Dawn also just shared about the importance of determining the function of the behavior in order to ensure that we're meeting exactly what it is that the student needs. What are your, does anyone have any responses when they hear that quote from page 30?
So this is Lisa. And again, I'm not a teacher, but I think we know this, but we don't know this, right? Because teachers say, I just want to teach, and they should be able to teach. But if there's not some sort of, I guess, integrated or constructive way that involves teachers and everybody in solving the behavior problems, it becomes separate behavior over here and separate teaching over there. And I think that's the way we've done it for years.
I think that sometimes what happens is that we specialize as teachers in one area, and we forget to pull in those that can support us supporting our students. So what happens is I'm an expert reading teacher, so I'm going to focus on this area, but I forget that I have my special ed teacher, or I have an interventionist that can help me with those behavior issues as well. And so we focus on what we know best and not focus on what's best to help our students.
And I think a part of that becomes, and I had a conversation with a school person today, a school-based therapist, how do you help, right? Because it's always come get little Johnny. Come use CPI. I see some teachers smiling. Come and do this so that I can teach. And so at the level of little Johnny acting out, what does the integration really look like?
Yeah, I appreciate what you said. I mean, I absolutely agree. Sometimes you can't tell what came first, the chicken or the egg, especially if we get children in. If they start with us in kindergarten, that's one thing, but if they pop in at second, third, fourth, fifth grade, it's not as obvious. I think, though, a lot of the problem goes back to training. I think we spend a lot of time teaching teachers how to do reading intervention and how to do math intervention. I remember in college getting a sticker chart. And my first year, I had a psychotic child that tried to kill people on a regular basis. The sticker chart was not going to do the trick. So, we didn't have really any training. There's much less instruction for the adults in the building on how do we address the behavior problems? How do we, other than just removing them, like you said, from the classroom, how do we work with those kids in order to get them to be able to be more resilient and to be able to stay in the classroom? And one of the ways that we've approached it, we tried some social emotional groups, which have worked really, really well. But also by we have a strong intervention team, And sometimes what that child needs, with the reading intervention or the math intervention is a relationship with an adult in the building who is there to help them learn how to behave appropriately, to learn how to handle stress, someone that they can go to, and someone really to disappoint if you don't do what you're supposed to do. And that's key, but I know that a lot of places we don't have those people. So, it's problematic.
Hey, this is Christy Wood from Hampton County School District. I just want to add to that. Our district has adopted a social emotional learning approach called conscious discipline. And one of the pieces that I think has made a huge difference for myself and a lot of the faculty is it really is a mindset change. It's an adult first model, and it's about really thinking about children that are having behavior issues or have missing skills. And you approach it about teaching those missing skills just as if you would if they were struggling in math or reading. And I think too many times we haven't addressed it that way. And we have seen a difference. Now it's a journey. We're always working on it, but we have seen a difference in our discipline referrals and things like that since we have adopted it. But it really, I think it goes back to a mindset shift as the adult that this is something that we have to teach. We have to teach that missing skill for the behavior, just as if we would if they were struggling academically.
Oh, I am just, what a great comment there. This is so great that I want us to move into our breakout room so that you'll have even more time to collaborate. Before we go, Ms. Wood, the conscious discipline has actually been recognized by CASEL. And so that's a great resource to use if anyone else is interested in looking at it. And it's just a book, right? And from there,
we have invested in professional development as well, district-wide. So there, Conscious Discipline has one major book that really talks about the different brain state models and really understanding the approach. But they have created the school family and other resources, and they also have online virtual PDs that you can do, or you can have consultants that come in and coaches that come in and work with you. So it's a variety of approaches. And it goes from, they'll say, infant to adulthood. So it's really just not something that's used in schools. It's used in a lot of other agencies as well.
Okay, thank you. I saw a hand was raised. Ms. Houston.
Yeah, it was mine. I don't know what's wrong with my camera. I'm Sheikah Houston from Chester County School District, and I agree with what has been said so far, definitely about the training being needed, and also the modeling as well, because a lot of times we think to start with the children when in a lot of cases we really need to start modeling what it actually feels like with the adults that are in your district. So when you feel, what that feels like, you understand a little bit better why it's needed. So that's the approach that we're taking in our district, and we're also taking a trauma-informed approach as well.
When you look at the SAM rubric for leadership, there's that component around providing professional development and coaching around MTSS implementation, which also gets into those ideas of, we need to show our educators how to meet the needs of the kids, specifically around behavior. So we're going to move to our breakout rooms. And Cynthia.
Okay. So, wow, here I really love how we are able to think collectively around this topic. Great conversations here. So now just think about the impact our growing knowledge would have on the students that we serve here in South Carolina. So in preparation for today's meeting, you should have read chapter 2 in our book and utilized the CASH protocol to reflect on your learning. We will now have 15 minutes to utilize the CASH protocol when discussing our reading with a group of colleagues in our breakout room today. CASH stands for Cognitive,
What did you learn? Affective. What did it make you feel? S is surprise. What surprised you? And help. What did you have questions about as you were reading this chapter? Now, this week, we really encourage you to make connections to each other's ideas while we're in the breakout rooms and having those conversations. So please take a moment, if you haven't done so already, to go to a breakout room, the sign-up document, and it is linked in your digital agenda, and we've also dropped it in the chat box. One of the rooms by typing your name in the list and then click on the link to be directed to the room. You will notice that one of the literacy specialists, facilitators are assigned to each room. And if your school or district is working with one of us, then we recommend that you collaborate with that particular literacy specialist. Okay. So 15 minutes, so the time is 3:57 now, so about 4:12, does that sound right? Okay, so at about 4:12, we'll return to the main breakout room. And remember, you can do this by clicking leave in your breakout room and resume for the MTSS book study. If you lose us, don't worry. The link is on the main meeting room that you can find also in the agenda. So are there any questions before we head out to the breakout room?
Readers, I do have a question on your end. Are you seeing that you can select your own room, or is it giving you a room to go to?
What I'm seeing here is saying you're able to join a room.
Okay.
If you push,
It says you're inviting you to join room 14. So I'm getting an invitation even though I signed up for room 10.
if you push close, is there an option to push close?
Yeah.
And then go to your bottom toolbar after you push close to the little breakout room option. Oh, that went away, Audrey.
Okay.
I am restarting them
Okay.
because it didn't look like it was giving them the option to choose their own.
Okay.
Well, today we're going to have to be flexible because Zoom has been acting funny on me. So you'll be able to go to a breakout room that has people from all around. And I apologize for that. If you were hoping to speak with your others, I don't know why this is not working the way it's. So I apologize, and we will get it together for next time. So hopefully the breakout rooms will start.
Okay.
Hi, I was in a room by myself. There was nobody in it. So I just got assigned to it. So I came back here. So you guys can just put me wherever. It doesn't matter.
I got moved from out of my group, thrown back into here.
I did too. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay, we're just gonna try one more time. Sorry about that. I'm gonna try one more time.
Okay. So I've been invited to 5. Okay.
Yeah, I have to.
Okay, and I'm going into 18, Audrey.
Hey, Audrey, interestingly enough, my screen has the little breakout room at the bottom where I could choose the room to go into.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. It must be something different with Zoom.
Let's see.
Like if you push close when that little says join room 4 or whatever, if you push close on that one and then go to the bottom of your toolbar, there's still like a breakout room option. Do you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can choose my room right there, just like last time.
Oh.
I don't know why it's doing that.
It was probably on my end and I just didn't click the right button to allow to select own rooms maybe when I
Okay.
started this meeting.
It's no big deal.
Well. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Julie, do you need any support getting into a room?
Because I wonder if she can.
Okay,
I'm
Miss
alone again.
Poor you. Okay, I'm gonna pop out and I'm gonna put you in another room.
So my assistant principal is in room 8. I don't know if it's full, but I'd love for us to be part of the same conversation.
Yes, let me put you in there. Okay, so Porter L. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, here she is.
Hey, Audrey.
Yeah.
On your end, when you open up breakout rooms,
Yes.
you can see who's in each room?
Yes.
So like there's some people in a room by themselves.
Okay, I'm gonna put,
Yeah, if you can move them into just another room.
okay.
So they're not by themselves. I can help you with it too if you need it.
Think I'm looking, oh my gosh, now people are in the waiting room. They must have got disconnected.
It's okay. We'll figure it out.
I got bumped out.
Okay.
Room Cynthia.
I was all alone.
Okay. We'll get you guys in. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
And let's see here. We've got Patricia. I'm looking and oh, I see Miss Bostic. I'm going to just put here. I'm looking for other rooms oh, Miss Cruz. I'm going to move her. Ricky's not in a room. That's okay. And I'm going to assign.
Okay, I'm gonna try again. Bye.
Thanks.
Audrey, it looks like Miss Green's going to be in a room by herself. Do you see that?
Looking. Miss Byers I'm going to move her. I don't.
Miss Green is in room 10.
Oh.
And just throw her in a different, maybe move her to room
9.
Yeah, where there's 2 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So time-wise, what do we do? Oh, I feel so embarrassed that this is.
Oh, they're in rooms. Everyone realizes. Tech.
Okay, here we go. Let's see here.
All right, so Cynthia joined in there. So there's 2 people in some rooms. Okay, are you good?
Yeah, I'm just wondering where to go. Where do I put myself?
Okay, you tell me where you're gonna go, if you're gonna go to like one of those smaller rooms, and then I'll.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to 7.
Okay. 7. Okay.
And what time are we coming back?
I think we said 4:12.
Okay.
Okay, Bettina's in 14. Okay, you're going to 7?
Yeah.
All right.
Band-Aids.
Exactly.
And if you have, let's say, a kindergarten class of 28 kids, and what if 27 of them, have phonemic awareness issues? Like you said, it's easier to put a Band-Aid on it than address it. But the research is very, very clear here that if we address it and we catch them up, we absolutely mitigate that risk by 5th grade down to 0. It's just critical that we do that. But you're right. I mean, when you have that many kids in a classroom, it's too easy to put a Band-Aid on it for lack of time.
Or what I was really thinking is to see the results, like we know what the research says, but to see the results right here in your district, then that requires a lot of focus on kindergarten, but then it's till 5th grade. Sure, you would see it along the way, but there's just such a time difference that's long-term, and it takes years to.
It does, and I don't know about your district, but ours, we have a lot of turnover year to year, a lot of transient. And so the training we put into the folks for like a year or 2, they leave us, and then it's the constant training and retraining and different superintendents, different visions, different, what have you. So to keep that trajectory in place with the same group in the same school for K to 5 would be powerful, but that's beyond the control too, I think, in a lot of schools.
Transitions of And students, you know.
Sure. Well, yeah, we have transient students too. You know, so I understand.
I missed the beginning of the conversation, but it is making me think about at the state level how a huge emphasis right now is being put on early learning with the addition of CERT-up classrooms, that expansion of 4K, and then super hyper focused on K3 with instruction and curriculum. And so it is kind of nice to see that connection that, okay, we're seeing similar decisions being made at the state level that follow, you know, what it's saying.
Research.
Yeah, right.
It's exciting. Then it's a very exciting, you know, I mean, I've been in education, this is my 27th year, all in here in South Carolina, and it's nice to see all that coming full circle for the kids who really need it. You know, it's exciting. So
I think a challenge is the testing grades are the grades that people look at for, are we making progress? And like Amanda, you were saying, it's going to take a few years. So that's where it's like, just be patient, but also know, like, I don't want to just then feel like those kids, we're not doing anything for them as well. You know, that's definitely not my meaning around that comment, but that we're still putting things in place for them, but knowing big change compared to what we've had before is going to take some time.
And you were talking about pre-K. So much of language and learning phonics comes from that oral language that begins so young. Even
so young.
Yeah, you can't teach cat unless you know what a cat and so the sooner we can offer that. The idea of 3-year-olds is hard walking around in school, but the sooner we can provide for that enables a stronger likelihood of 5K students meeting that grade level expectation, which affects 5th grade.
Absolutely. You know, even with our pre-K kids, we have 4-year-old pre-K. Now we do have a 3K program. It's very limited, and it's more for our special needs 3K that they've already been identified. But we just try to get out in the community to our parents, you know, pre-K, and say, you know, if you've got kids younger than pre-K, we want you to immerse them in a language-rich environment, because again, that's going to help them at those testing grades, but they just can't see that far down the path, you know. So
where I am serves quite a few 3K. They used to have a format for 3K, 4K, and 5K in one classroom.
Right.
And now they're kind of doing some different formats, and some are 3K, some are 3K and 4K, and some are 3K to 5K. But I mean, and they're tiny, but you just think this is already, they've learned so much, you know, about specialization and about being in a classroom setting and following directions, oral, verbal listening skills. And there's a lot of good things I think that come from it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a school I was at today, and their 4K students, a lot of English language learners. And so we were looking at their universal screening data as a kindergartner now. And those were the kids that were proficient. And so it was really exciting to see, oh my gosh, how hard that 4K teacher worked last year, bringing in, you know, visuals to teach them language, having them respond in complete sentences. I mean, it was just, she worked really hard, and
that's amazing.
It transferred, or at least it carried on with them to kindergarten. So if we
that's the key, get it to transfer.
Yes.
That is awesome.
That is amazing.
Audrey, it gives me high hopes for our kids this year. So
yeah,
in our futures.
Let's see.
High hope. I like this cash protocol. Very simple.
I'm wondering, do your schools or districts like think through, I'm looking on page 29, at the bottom around the function of the behavior, and I created like a little unwanted behavior, and then is it to obtain attention, or is it to avoid the academic task? And wondering, are those conversations that are discussed to think through, or is it more focused on what are they doing and what can we put in place?
I just had.
Go ahead, go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just had this conversation today. It was my administrators and then our social worker, and we were talking about a specific student, but whether or not our response was causing a problem, or if it was actually like reevaluating the way we're responding to the behavior, if it's not
That's a
reinforcing.
very reflective conversation.
And I feel like we have lots of those, trying to reflect on what we're doing and how that's affecting what's going on. I'm sorry, Alicia, for cutting you
No,
off.
you're fine. I was going to say that I think it's a combination of both. I think
all right. It's looking like we're all returned now from our breakout rooms. Okay, so Cynthia.
All right, we are ready. Okay, are you sharing your screen? I don't.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share again.
Okay. There it is. All righty, so now that we're back, let's take a few minutes and have a shared discussion. We're going to use the 3-2-1 discussion protocol. So now here's your time to shine. Can we have 3 speakers to share a highlight from your discussion? And I heard a lot of great things as I was popping into rooms. So anybody want to share?
One highlight that we discussed was the screening, or need for a screening for social and emotional needs. That was one highlight. We have academic screenings, but so the discussion about screening for those social emotional needs.
Mm-hmm.
In our discussion, we were talking about the ACEs screening that goes along those same lines, that could be helpful and useful information for those that are trying to decide what's best for a student.
Okay. Okay. And do we have another speaker who would like to share a highlight? All righty, so now we'd love to take to hear from 2 speakers to share a connection to their group while they were participating in your breakout room discussions. Do we have 2 speakers to share a connection?
I'll speak again.
Okay.
One connection that we discussed and that I made with this the chapter was the PBIS program. A lot of this chapter just it was like speaking to what PBIS is, and so that was one connection. Like, it's not something that we're not doing. It's something that we already are doing, and even bringing back, like, not reinventing the wheel. So appealing to students, kinesthetic learning, hands-on, visual, those appeals. So.
Yeah.
And Cynthia, I was thinking, I just want to direct everyone's attention to the state website that has resources around MTSS under that tab. And the recommended social emotional learning screeners are listed there. Because I know we were just talking about a need for screeners for SEL.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Audrey. Okay, do we have another connection?
I'll share.
Thank you.
A connection that our group talked about was that statement, the best prevention is tier 1, and that's that in classroom intervention. And we all say that was a struggle for our schools, that teachers don't have the resources, nor I guess the type of training that they're really getting that intervention done. And that was one focus that we all felt like we needed to move towards. And I know it's going to be my coaching cycle, getting in the classrooms and modeling what intervention would look like in the classroom. And almost everybody in my group was literacy coaches, and they all agreed.
Great.
And I just want to jump in there. We've been looking at, in my district, the function of behavior, and implementing the tiers of support. And we're strong in tier 3. We are developing tier 2 on the behavior side. But what we've learned is, if we're not strong in tier 1, all of the other tiers sort of collapse on tier 1, and teachers get frustrated. Folks in the other tiers get frustrated. I guess the tiers cause tears. I don't know, but if we can figure all of that out, I'm here for it.
Wow, I never thought about tears causing tears. No pun intended, right? So finally, just a question. Anybody have a question before we move on to the next part?
I do, and I'm not too far, many years removed from the classroom, and I was just wondering if someone can help me understand, when did the separation happen from teachers, modeling expected behaviors and setting procedures and classroom expectations? When did it shift to just focusing on the curriculum and not creating a foundation or an environment that is conducive for effective teaching and learning, or effective instruction? So when did that disconnect happen? Because as a teacher in a classroom, you can't teach unless you have these structures in place. That's just my opinion. So can somebody help me when that disconnect happened?
I agree with you, and I don't think that the shift probably was an intentional one. I think that with more high stakes testing and with the pressure that comes from performance, where you're expected as the leader to be at a certain level, you're expected as teachers to make sure students are at a certain level, I think that easily makes other things look like, oh, well, we don't have time for that, because now we've got to just focus on this because we have to be here. So with that pressure of more and more high stakes testing, I think that's where it happened. I don't think that was probably intentional. That was just the byproduct of what was expected.
And to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, in terms of the last 2 years being COVID years, we haven't had the kids in the classroom on a consistent basis, especially at the beginning of the year. And last year we joked, it's day 1, part 1, it's day 1, part 2, because our district was, we had half a group and half a group in the elementary grade that would come. And then we weren't there on Fridays. And then we all came together in January. And then, you know, you had kids out for quarantine. And so you're trying to teach routines and expectations, and half your class is not there. And the discussion that you have with those kids, you can't recreate some of that on day 2. And, you know, that it's just, I think it's just a function of what we're living through right now. I don't think it was intentional that it went away, but it's like, you have to teach them.
And I agree with that. What I think has happened for us, it's very, very philosophically aligned. We all agree in the whole child. We all want all of their needs to be met. When principals and their school leaders are tasked to figure out how to do that, the specifics of scheduling and staffing come into play. So I'll give you an example. One of our Title I schools is trying to figure out how to make sure all students get Tier 1 instruction in reading and math, and try to make sure that they pull them for Tier 3 reading intervention, Tier 3 ESOL intervention, and social emotional intervention when they're still trying to get Tier 1 reading, Tier 1 math. So then all of these people are advocating for the same kid, but we only have this one window of time where you can pull. So we all agree with an MTSS program where kids get served. But when you have a kid that needs all 3 and they only have one, one day, and they need, it becomes, okay, how do we do that? And so what we've been working on is really looking at it at the school-wide level of how can we ensure this one student gets what they need with data meetings. And that does help with, all right, we might have to do a compromise where they get 30 minutes of ESOL instead of 50, so they can also get 30 minutes of RTI. What this book really helped me see is it doesn't have to be a separate service, right? Like when you're thinking about scheduling and staffing, you're trying to think about that, like which team does this kid need? But with behavior support, that's an everybody team. We all got to speak that language. We all got to be supportive of that. And so while we have school psychs who can do small groups and SEL pullouts and guidance who do the SEL lessons, how can we work smarter and not harder? Because there's no way to, as my dad would say, squeeze water out of a rock. There's only that one window of time. Kids can't get it all, even though if they need it all, but we can figure out how to do it more integrated. And I really feel like this discussion has helped think about it in different ways.
And I really think that modeling piece is so essential, because we can't just talk about supporting leaders. We have to do that with action. Sometimes you may have to go tap them out. Hey, take a walk, or take a drive around. I've got your building for the next few hours, because everyone is experiencing some types of trauma at this point due to the pandemic, from everything that everyone has gone through. So when everyone sees that this is what it looks like, then it doesn't look so foreign when you're asked to implement it.
I had a discussion yesterday with my second grade teachers, and they were like, these kids can't copy from the board. They can't do this, they can't do that. I said, well, you do realize that these children have never had a full year of school, because we went out in March. We were shut down in March of their kindergarten year. And even if they were face-to-face last year, we had the hybrid, then we had some virtual, we were in and out. I said, so, they have never had 2 full years of school. And so, yeah, they're behind. A lot of them were virtual last year. And there's going to be a learning curve to that we're going to be facing for a while.
I think you're right. A lot of our kids walk through the door automatically in Tier 2. And I think that is a part of the challenge on the academic and the behavior side, because they're walking through the door with a lot more needs than what is typical.
And the original question that got us here was, where was that split? And I think that's where we need to stop language in schools that say they can't do blank, to then ask, so what does this mean for your teaching? Because if they don't know it, then we can't just expect them to be able to do it. We have to teach them how. And we have to start shifting that focus of they can't to, okay, so what are we going to do about it?
So one question I have as it relates to that, and I've thought about it a lot, and I may have an unpopular opinion, so let me just float that out there. But I'm on the mental health side, so bear with me. I think we spend a lot of time teaching kids school skills, but not life skills. I think that if you say to a teacher, hey, you have to teach these behavior things, then something in the curriculum may not get taught, especially if the teacher is going to have to test the students on certain skills. And I think social emotional learning is so important now that if they don't learn every concept in, ELA, I think teaching, I guess Shakespeare, Edgar Allan Poe, I think is a waste of time. You're only going to use it in school. Sorry, ELA English people. But I think it's a waste of time. And I think the curriculum needs to be adapted to what kids are dealing with. And it needs to be stuff that they want to read that can also teach social emotional learning. And yes, they need algebra, some of them, not all of them. But I think we really need to look at what we're teaching kids too. And is it all useful? And does it meet the needs of where we are now? And if we had changed some of that, can we give teachers more latitude? My unpopular opinion.
Miss Spears, I'm an English teacher and I agree with you. But what I think that the disconnect comes in when we fail to make connections with what they're learning to real life. If that makes sense.
I totally agree with you, and thank you for not throwing darts at me. But I think half of what Julius Caesar, who cares? I mean, kids today don't give a rip about that. I think half of that curriculum could be revamped and made social emotional learning and could really help us turn out folks that have those soft skills that employers are looking for. That's why I really like Leader in Me, because it's aligned with what the business world thinks in terms of soft skills. And I think that we've got to really kind of get to a place where we are comfortable changing the curriculum.
Yeah, I think one thing that I was surprised in this chapter was that they didn't have more about building relationships. And when we build those relationships with our students, then we automatically know which text to use to make connections with our students. When we make those relationships, build those relationships with them, it helps us make different connections and better connections with our students.
And I totally agree with that, Ms. Savage. Relationship is important, regardless of how much time a child is with you. If you build if you have a positive relationship, a positive rapport with your children, they're going to want to come back to you. They're going to want to do what you're asking them to do. And so I agree with you, Ms. Savage. Before we can teach children anything, we have to build that relationship. We have to make connections to their lives so that when we share what we believe is important based on curriculum or standards, we like or we don't, they'll be more apt to receive it. And then in that relationship, you will then be able to address those social and emotional needs because they will trust you to correct them. They will trust you to care about their feelings and their well-being.
I absolutely agree. I'm newly out of the classroom.
Alrighty.
But a personal testimony, I was working at a school who was one of our lowest in our district. And my students, I felt, I mean, and one of my biggest things was making
Oh,
connections.
Lord.
Students required, in order for them to do anything, I knew I had to build those relationships first. However, at the end of the year, because of those relationships, and I attribute it to the relationships built, those students' scores were the highest growth in the district. And it wasn't anything I taught, because I did teach Romeo and Juliet, but we made connections outside of Shakespeare. We made connections to drama that's in school. And so because of the connections we made throughout the year and the relationships built, I attribute that to the growth that they made academically.
All righty, so are we ready to on to great conversations here?
All right. Sounds like we could have gone on for days there.
Yeah, like an hour is not enough today.
And what kept coming up for me is this quote: competence precedes confidence. So if I'm competent in something, if I know that if I have skills, if I know that I can have some self-control, that leads to confidence in my attitude. So I keep coming back to that. And so with that, I want to move to this self-assessment of MTSS implementation, because there is a cause and effect link between, that's why we say MTSS is integrated, an integrated approach, because there is a cause and effect relationship there between academics and behavior. And during our last meeting, we introduced you to the SAM tool, and SAM stands for the self-assessment of MTSS implementation. And we asked you in your school, at your school level, and your MTSS team to reflect on domain 1, which is leadership. And we hope that you found it beneficial to go through that process, and that you were able to develop goals, possible next steps for enhancing that leadership domain. As a reminder, the SAM 2.0 instrument is used to measure school level MTSS implementation. And so we know that the quality of the MTSS implementation is associated with increased likelihood of instruction and interventions leading to successful student outcomes. So when the system is working, we're getting positive results. Therefore, it's important for schools to monitor not just the student outcomes, but also how assessments, instruction, interventions, database problem solving, how all those elements are put into place, and the fidelity with which those elements are implemented. So in chapter 2, we identified that there's a connection to domain 2 of the SAM, which domain 2 is labeled building capacity and infrastructure for the implementation. So now that we've had time to discuss our ideas about the integration, let's return to the Padlet from the start of the session. And what might you want to add, or what might you want to revise? Couple more seconds. Great, I can see some ideas starting to shape and evolve there. This image is from page 23, and it's a clear visual and another reason why an integrated model is an advantage to students. So you can see that there are lots of pathways, many, both behavioral and academic. These are challenges that lead to a combined academic and behavior challenge and possible solution. In order to meet the needs of our students, we must ensure that we are meeting both areas of the need in our support. So if it's a multi-pronged problem, we're coming at it from a multi-pronged solution. And then again on page, Audrey, there we go.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. The next slide. Yep. There we go.
Oh my gosh.
There we go. There we go. On page 32, it states that by thinking about classroom management and classroom instruction as significant parts of the same process, teaching is likely to be clearer, more focused, balanced, more sustaining, more enriching for both teachers and students over the course of the year. Adopting an integrated MTSS model, it can provide synergistic effects that can make the work better across both academics and behavior. So this type of thinking and systematic implementation, it doesn't happen automatically. It requires intentional focus on building the capacity and infrastructure. So let's look specifically at item number 9 on your SAM. The leadership team facilitates professional development and coaching for all staff on multi-tiered instruction and intervention relative to roles and responsibilities. So review the indicators across the rubric, and where do you identify your school or district? What could possibly be some next steps? And so these are the questions that as you're reading and you review the SAM in the next couple of weeks. And in the previous slide, I wanted to just remind you that in your MTSS modules, there are videos that give you some short clips on that module on building capacity and infrastructure in your building.
So we also identified a connection to this chapter and domain 3, which is the communication and collaboration domain. Whole school initiatives require collaboration across general education, special education, administration, and school and district level support staff. So as you return to your school or your district, there are 2 questions that you may want to think about. The first question is, how do you integrate academic and behavior conversations in your MTSS process? The second question is, how are all stakeholders included in these conversations? Again, this is just another reminder about the modules that's located on the department's website, and you can use these to help support your school and district level conversations about the importance of communication and collaboration under the South Carolina MTSS framework. So please be sure to check them out. Within your school MTSS team, which could include an administrator, general, and special education teacher, content area experts, instructional support staff, and student support personnel, we encourage you to use the time between now and our next book study session to complete the SAM rubric for domain 2 and 3, as it supports the learning that we did today in chapter 2. specifically regarding building capacity and infrastructure for implementation and communication and collaboration. So if you're working with the literacy specialists this year, please be sure to include them in on the process. So as we continue through our book study, we will return to the SAM again for self-reflection and goal setting. And even if you've completed the SAM in the past, it will be important to return to it now to determine your next steps.
Okay, so now again, let's now take a moment to reflect on the what and so what about the information that was presented today in chapter 2 and the discussions that you participated in. Also think about the now what. Now, what will you do in response to today's book study? And what action steps can you take to enhance MTSS in your school or even in your district? So just take a moment on those 3 Post-it notes, or you can draw 3 boxes on a piece of paper and write down 1 action step on each of the Post-it notes. And then, for example, my action step might be to collaborate with my school's MTSS team and to complete the MTSS SAM tool, in which we focus on domains 2 and 3. And then after you write down that action steps, then using the chat box, just jot down some of your thinking. What would be some of your action steps? Okay, so please take a moment to do that and then share one of your steps in the chat box. All right, and you should be able to read some of the action steps that participants are sharing. Okay.
Just waiting to see if we have some risk takers who will
Yeah.
pop some in the
Yeah,
chat.
I see
Awesome.
one. Okay, so there's a plan to meet with the MTSS director. Oh, and then it popped out.
Oh, and the special ed director discuss possibilities to support for behavior support options for the teachers.
Okay. So it looks like some really great action steps. All right, so let's move on. Okay. So here are a few reminders for our, before we end today. Just remember that our next virtual meeting will be October the 7th at 3:30 p.m. Here you're going to read chapter 3, and this time you're going to use the protocol of triangle, circle, square. And then remember to complete the MTSS SAM domains 2 and 3 within your building. Okay. And so here is that protocol. So as you're reading chapter 3, to prepare for our next discussion, use that triangle, circle, square protocol to record your learning. As you can see for the triangle, you list 3 important points from the chapter. For your circle, based on this chapter, what is something rolling around in your head? It's really got you thinking. And then for the squares, what are your beliefs after reading this chapter? Okay, so as we wrap up, we ask that you take a few minutes to complete the exit for today's session. And that link can be found at the top of the digital agenda that you have. Be sure that you complete the exit ticket as attendance will be documented for this book study throughout the sessions. And another reminder that any participants who attend all sessions as documented by this exit ticket will receive 12 renewal credits at the end of the book study. And here again, we thank you and learning together, even when we are apart. And this has been great, and we thank you so much.
Can you put the exit ticket link in the chat, maybe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Ricky. Thank you, Ricky.
And again, I want to apologize for the breakout room mishaps, and we'll get it sorted for next week or next time.
Audrey, it looks like somebody's asking for the QR code.
Okay, I'll put it back up on the screen.
Okay.
There we go.
Thank you. I keep forgetting that it's blocked in some districts.
All right, thanks everyone.